right, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. First of all, can you hear me okay? Great, excellent. So, welcome everyone. I'm Andrew Berman, the Executive Director of Village Preservation, and we are all here this evening for the unveiling of our Amelia Earhart plaque on Greenwich House, her former home. Very exciting. Yes, yes. So, couple of introductory words before we get to our wonderful speakers that we have here tonight with us. First of all, if you're not familiar with us, Village Preservation is a neighborhood preservation organization that works to preserve the architectural and cultural heritage of Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. Since 1980, we've been documenting and celebrating these neighborhoods, fighting to stop inappropriate development while encouraging appropriate development, and advocating on behalf of our cultural institutions and independent small businesses. In addition, we host about 80 free programs per year, of which this is one, and they cover a wide range of topics related to the history, architecture, culture, and development of our neighborhoods, of which there is so much to say. Now, we're a membership-based organization, so your support is essential to our capacity to provide this free programming and continue our advocacy and preservation work. So if you like what we do, consider joining us or making a donation by going to villagepreservation.org, and I know we're circulating materials connected to the organization as well, even if you just want to find out more about what we do and the resources we provide. So as I mentioned before, we're brought here tonight by our historic plaque program. Historic plaques are a great way to educate the public about the history of our neighborhoods and the incredible events, people, and movements connected to sites all around us. These markers highlight the places where history was made and the figures behind that history. People like Frank Stella, Francis Perkins, Jane Jacobs, James Baldwin, Lorraine Hansberry, Charles Mingus, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Martha Graham, who are among the many figures we've commemorated through this program, along with sites like the former NAACP headquarters, the Fillmore East, and Julius Bar, among many other locations. Now, this will be the 27th plaque that we've installed across Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. Many of these honor individuals who transformed their field and whose work in some way changed the world. These tend to have been individuals who've embodied our neighborhood's tradition of breaking barriers and redefining what's possible. Our latest plaque is located on Greenwich House, a site where one of the most iconic figures in American history lived and worked as a social worker as her aviation career was taking off, Amelia Earhart. While balancing her writing and social work with her flying aspirations, Earhart immersed herself in the neighborhood's bohemian culture and discovered her public persona as a feminist and unconventional spirit. In the years that followed, Earhart went on to set numerous aviation records, champion women's involvement in aviation, and help found the 99s, an organization for female pilots. Yes, that deserves a round of applause. Along the way, she became an internationally renowned American icon, one whose disappearance during a global circumnavigation attempt was mourned around the world. While one may not typically associate Amelia Earhart with downtown Manhattan, her trailblazing spirit and accomplishments are a perfect embodiment of our neighborhoods and of the people and places our plaque program is intended to celebrate. So to help mark the placement of a plaque in our honor, we'll be hearing from two distinguished speakers. Before we do, I want to thank everyone at Greenwich House, notably Darren Block and his staff. Darren was originally going to be here, but he got called away to something else, and we totally understand and really appreciate all of his hard work towards making this possible. And we want to thank everybody over at Greenwich House for their interest in our plaque program and for their help and support throughout the entire process. I say this at every plaque unveiling. You would think it would be easy to find property owners who would want to have a historic plaque on their building. It is not. And we're really, really grateful to Greenwich House and all the other property owners that do have our historic plaques. Clearly, it shows that they care about and celebrate our history. They recognize that it's precious and that it's worthy of preservation and celebration. And I couldn't agree more. I'd also like to thank Juan Rivero, who manages this program and organized the event. Juan, thank you very much. And all the members of the Village Preservation staff here tonight who have helped, and those who aren't here but also helped. So our first speaker is going to be Laurie Gwen Shapiro. Laurie is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and journalist whose writing has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, New York, The Daily Beast, Lapham's Quarterly, Slate, Aeon, The Forward, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. Her newest book, The Aviator and the Showman, Amelia Earhart, George Putnam, and the Marriage That Made an American Icon, published by Viking, was a best book of summer by CBS Sunday Morning. She's also an adjunct professor of journalism in the graduate program at NYU's Arthur L. Carter Journalism Institute. Laurie.
Thank you. I know we're going to keep our speeches short, but I just want to say what a thrill it is to be doing one of these, because I'm often in the audience like you are. I'm a native New Yorker, and I truly appreciate the preservation of New York and also Greenwich House. I did some research here for my book. This book was worked on for 5 years. It just came out in July from Viking. And one of the things I'm going to do right now is let you know what time in the century, in the 20th century, that Amelia Earhart was right here. What was she doing at Greenwich House? And many of you might know that Amelia Earhart disappeared in 1937. In her lifetime, most people knew her for achievement, especially her 1932 solo trip across the Atlantic that left from Newfoundland. But she actually becomes famous in 1928, and that is when we're going to go back in time to why she is at this building. She was indeed a pilot already. This was not her first time living in New York. She is going to be living on the top floor. But let me go back a little bit more. In 1920, she was up in Toronto. We have a man in Toronto in the audience who I was just talking to, and she observed a lot of people flying planes. America was not in World War I yet, but she also saw a lot of people that were injured and sick in hospitals, and she changed her plans and wanted to become a medical doctor. And she came to New York City in the early 20s, and she was at Columbia University. They did not take women in the regular program, but in the extension program. But her parents were fighting. They had moved from Midwest to California, and she took the summer off, and she learned how to fly, because Los Angeles was a really booming aviation town. So she became a bit of a stunt pilot, but later on, there really wasn't a way for women to move ahead in aviation. And she changed plans. She moved with her sister and her mother, her parents broke up, to Boston, where she became a social worker. And her hero at this time were two people, Charles Lindbergh. She had a picture on the wall, and also Frances Perkins, who there is another plaque a few blocks away. And Frances Perkins was a social worker, and she would later be the first woman in the cabinet. And this was the way that women could move ahead as social workers. That was a palatable path for a lot of men and women. And she is one in Boston. In 1928, a man named George Palmer Putnam is looking for a woman to be the first passenger across the Atlantic. He was a publisher at Putnam Books. He was not the owner. He was the nephew of George Haven Putnam, and he had published Charles Lindbergh in 1927 with a book named We, and it was one of the biggest books of the year. And through circumstances you can read about, I'm going to speed this up, there was basically what I could call the first reality show. So she had no plans of going across the Atlantic, and she was cast, not as a pilot, but as a passenger, and she had a ticker tape parade. So in 1928, she was very famous. She would become even more famous in 1932, but she was brought to New York. The man, George Putnam, would later become her husband. He was a married man at that time, and that's a bit saucy stuff you can find out in here. And basically got her a job as an aviation editor at Cosmopolitan. She didn't quite write the articles. This is the jazz age. There's a lot of hullabaloo about, and basically, she is still being promoted as a social worker. She's a big fan of Mary, who's running the Greenwich House, and George uses that connection to see if she could move in and be able to do social work, to be able to write about aviation, to go on a book tour, and there was actually some rooms available, and she got it at a discount so that she could do a little bit of social work. She also had her mother move in. And basically, again, this gets a little saucy. At a certain point, Amelia and George are an item. And the mother is not liking this. She doesn't want her to be involved with a divorced man. And there's wonderful archives that I found at NYU that are the Greenwich House archives are in the New York University archives if anyone is interested. And there's all sorts of comments about what Amelia Earhart was doing. There are a few witnesses. She did do a little social work. One of the things that was very interesting is that she was talking in the auditorium to local people, local youth about aviation. And that's how she's here. Later on, she would move closer to her paramour, up to 57th Street and 9th Avenue. But for a while, she is here from 1928 to, I would say, June of 1929. And she's having coffees. Well, she's not really a coffee drinker, but she's having tea, and she's going to poetry readings, and there are people that could see her. And at this point, she already has her iconic haircut, which her hair was cut to look more like Charles Lindbergh, to promote her as Lady Lindbergh. And it's a fascinating chapter of history. Again, she will become much more famous later on, but her moments in time here is when she is on the cusp of superstardom. And later on, in a few years, she would cause riots. The rock stars of the late 1920s and the beginning of the 30s were aviators. The flapper era was gone, and what had come in its stead is Charles Lindbergh, Admiral Richard Byrd, and Amelia Earhart. And I just hope that gives you a little bit of a taste of why she was exactly here, and I thank you. And I hope that if anyone has any further questions, I'm going to hang around, and I'm happy to answer anything that you have. And I would love to pass on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much for that, giving us a really important context in terms of Amelia Earhart's time here. So now we're going to hear from Laura Langner, who's the Chief Health and Human Services Officer at Greenwich House. Laura oversees all behavioral health programs as well as senior services at Greenwich House, and she has over 35 years of experience in the nonprofit and social services industries, including roles in direct service, program administration, and organizational leadership. So, Laura.
Good evening. On behalf of Greenwich House, I'm honored to speak as we go to unveil the commemorative plaque celebrating Amelia Earhart and the time that she spent with us here at Greenwich House in a legacy of service. Her life reminds us of something timeless, that service and ambition are not opposites, that they are companions. In Amelia's era, social work was one of the few professions open to women, a path that followed them and taught them to lead, to teach, and allowed them to shape communities. She didn't abandon tenants or social work when she went to the skies. She carried them with her. She believed that her gift of flight should serve something greater than herself. Today's plaque is not just a marker of a moment in history. It is a reminder of what Greenwich House has always stood for: welcoming hope, promoting dignity, creating opportunity. Over a century after its founding, Greenwich House's mission remains alive. From youth, arts, and the elderly, childhood education, and older adult services, behavioral health, and workforce. So what can we draw from Amelia's example today? First, let us remember that frontline social work is about being present. It is about showing up in the neighborhood in real time, in real lives. Amelia lived here. She walked these streets, and she stayed connected to the community she respected and admired. Second, let us carry toward the spirit of innovation. She broke barriers, not just shrinking herself, but also by expanding what she believed was possible. Just as we must continue to evolve our services to meet the continuing needs of the community that we serve. Finally, let us honor the idea of service as identity, not just as a job. Amelia's belief in service never left her. It simply found a new expression in flight, a way to use visibility and achievement to advance women and to promote social progress. Our challenge today is to integrate compassion, creativity, and resilience into everything that we do.
What incredibly inspiring words to describe an incredibly inspiring figure. So hopefully we're going to inspire you even further now with the actual unveiling of the plaque, which hopefully will live on here forevermore. So I'm going to ask our two speakers to join me here as we unveil it. So if you guys can just come over here and grab the side, we'll each kind of do a little tug from the bottom. Get rid of some of the tape. Do this. There we go. Let's see if we can. There we go. So I'm just going to read it to everybody. It says, Amelia Earhart, 1897 to 1937. Pioneering aviator Amelia Earhart lived and volunteered as a social worker at Greenwich House from 1927 to 1929. Her advocacy and accomplishments helped break down gender barriers in aviation, a record-setting solo transatlantic flight, an attempt to circumnavigate the globe, turned her into a cultural icon and inspired generations. And we could not be more proud to be able to place this here along with all of the other markers that we have throughout the neighborhood and that we will continue to place to help honor and remember the really remarkable and transformative history connected to these neighborhoods, as well as some of the wonderful institutions like Greenwich House, which are such an integral part of that. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here tonight. Please explore our other plaques and find out a little bit more about what Village Preservation does. And I'll ask our three speakers to join me up here for a final picture.